that are in the Geneva document. Geneva is in the Geneva Plan, based on the Geneva Framework, the Geneva document, and the Geneva Agreements.
Rebels say they've retreated for tactical purposes, but authorities seem confident they've broken the backbone of what they call terrorist operations. RT's Maria Finashina spoke to a resident of the besieged city who gave an eyewitness account of what she said were atrocities the rebels committed while in control.
The self-proclaimed revolutionaries are real bandits. They can shoot in the back. They kill people, rob houses. One can be shot dead for no reason. We're afraid to go to the country, as our car can be stopped and we can be shot. They kill both young and old. They take people from their homes and chop them into pieces, put them in plastic bags, and then throw them out.
And they've killed many, many people there, especially Christians.
Barack Obama said during a TV interview on the Barbara Walters show on US television that the US and UN recognizes that the Syrian opposition coalition is the legitimate representative of all of the Syrian people in opposition to the Assad regime, offering a new legitimacy to the Syrian rebel group. He also added that he hopes this will also include women's and minority group rights. The statement comes after the Friends of Syria conference being hosted in Marrakesh to discuss the 20-month Syrian crisis.
We consider them the legitimate representative of the Syrian people in opposition to the Assad regime.
That's a big step.
It is a big step.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نعلن نحن التشكيلات المقاتلة على أرض مدينة حلب وريفها بالكامل جبهة النصرة، كتائب أحرار الشام، لواء التوحيد، أحرار سوريا، لواء حلب الشهباء الإسلامي، حركة الفجر الإسلامية، درع الأمة، لواء عندان، كتائب الإسلام، لواء جيش محمد، لواء النصر، كتيبة الباز، كتيبة السلطان محمد، لواء درع الإسلام وغيرها، عن رفضنا المشروع التآمري ما سمي الائتلاف الوطني، وتم الإجماع والتوافق على تأسيس دولة إسلامية عادلة، ورفض أي مشروع خارجي من ائتلافات أو مجالس تفرض علينا في الداخل من أي جهة كانت، والله ولي التوفيق. تكبير الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
أصدر الداعية السعودي محمد العريفي فتوى خاصة تحل مشكلات المجاهدين الجنسية بعد إعرابه عن انزعاجه من حرمان محاربي الإسلام الذين يقاتلون في سوريا إلى جانب المعارضة المسلحة الملذات الدنيوية، موضحا أن الجهاديين منذ عامين لم يجتمعوا إلى النساء. وأباحت فتوى العريفي زواج المقاتلين في سوريا الذي سماه العريفي زواج المناكحة مدة ساعات معدودة من سوريات، وذلك كي يفسح في المجال للآخرين، مؤكدا أن هذا الأمر يشد من عزم الرجال المجاهدين في سوريا ويعد من موجبات الجنة للواتي يقمن به، شرط أن يكن ما فوق 14 عاما أو أرامل أو مطلقات سوريات. من جانبهم أعرب منتقدو فتوى العريفي عن غضبهم على هذه الفتوى لكونها تبيح استغلال ضحايا الأزمة السورية ما يعد اغتصابا. وكان العريفي قد أصدر سابقا فتوى قال فيها إن البنت يجب ألا تخلو مع أبيها ولا تجالسه وحدها، وإنما تحرص على أن تكون الأم موجودة أو إخوانها حتى ييسر الله لها وتتزوج.
طيارة فوق معسران. خد على اليمين. معك أنا معك الطيارة إن شاء الله. خد أخوي عشان
All right, well, for more on Syria, we can now talk to Dr. Nidal Kavalan, a former Syrian ambassador to Turkey, joining us live from Damascus. Thank you for coming on RT today. You are there in Damascus. The US and its allies are adamant that Assad has to go, but that is not a part of the ceasefire deal. How do you see Syria's next chapter if all sides drop their arms?
I think, before Obama, George W. Bush wanted Assad to go, and Jacques Chirac wanted Assad to go. They have all gone, and Assad is still there. Assad is the choice of the Syrian people. In the most recent referendum, he got almost 60%, despite all the hard circumstances on the ground, of the votes of confidence of the Syrian people regarding the new constitution of the Syrian Arab Republic. I agree with that. We need reform. Reform is vital, is essential for the modernization of Syria, but we want reform in a peaceful and civilized manner, not under the bonnets of the so-called Wahhabis who have been butchering men, women, and children in Syrian cities and towns. Syria has learned a very hard lesson from the Arab League observers saga. If you remember, the opposition or the armed gangs have actually used the existence of Arab League observers on the ground, and they have multiplied, they fostered in Syrian cities and towns, and it has cost the Syrian army and security forces and innocent civilians hundreds of extra lives, or extra hundreds of innocent lives of Syrian population and army soldiers. To get rid of some of those armed gangs and to clear some Syrian cities and towns. So Syria does not want the same thing to happen again during the existence of any international observers on the ground. That's why Syria has demanded that rebels or armed gangs lay down their arms, and Syria wanted written guarantees from main handlers and supporters.
Let's go live now to London, talk to Haitham Al-Sibahi. He's from the opposition supporting Syrian Social Club. Mr. Al-Sibahi, thanks for being with RT. General Manas Tlaf, the most prominent defector, let's face it, from Syria's armed forces, acknowledged, didn't he, that it's essential to achieve unity in Syria. But how is it possible to do that when the rebels are refusing dialogue and continuing to fight, sir?
Well, let me say, first of all, the so-called rebel, they don't have their decision in their hands. The decisions come from outside, from a country like United States, backed by the Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So they just do what they've been told is to break the infrastructure of Syria, bleed the army, and bleed the economy. These people, they understand only the language of the guns and the language of the bullets. So this is what they have to be faced by the Syrian army, by the bullets, and it's going on now. Damascus is nearly cleaned from them. Aleppo is going to be cleaned. We want, as a Syrian, we want a dialogue. We want a political process. We want a ballot box. But everything it comes on the table, these groups are refused by their masters also. They refused Mr. Kofi Annan plan from the beginning. They refused every initiative. So now is the language of the bullets. And we believe the legitimate forces in Syria is the Syrian army, because there's a government with all its mistakes, still the legitimate government. The army is the legitimate forces, and it has to take on these people. All the Syrians want them to take on these people, because we have seen what these people have created on the ground.
So with everything you're saying, you don't think there'll be a negotiated settlement anytime soon, i.e. the two sides getting together, the opposition and the regime, and talking, no?
Well, if they're masters in the United States and Saudi Arabia and Turkey also, then we have to mention, has to close its border as any country in the world has to control its border, not those jihadists and those elements coming through the border as they wish, and they've been armed in the south of Turkey. There will not be talk, there will not be dialogue till the sound of the gun die down.
In recent days, we've had the so-called Friends of Syria meeting that occurred in Istanbul. We've spoken to some Syrians who say that group is not the Friends of Syria. They are the enemies of Syria, and yet they're the ones who are arming the rebels. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, you are absolutely right, and they are absolutely right. Friends of Syria are Russia, are Venezuela, are China, countries who have been supporting a peaceful end, a peaceful settlement for the dispute in Syria. If those so-called friends of Syria who've gathered first in Tunisia and now in Istanbul, who are actually enemies, bitter enemies of Syria, are supporters and friends of Syria, they would have stopped the media propaganda, the media provocation initiated by Qatar and Saudi Arabia, mainly Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya TV channels. They would have stopped arming those militias in Turkey and training them in Turkey and some other neighboring countries, mainly Lebanon, Turkey, and probably Jordan and Iraq. If you are a friend of Syria, then you would help the government accomplish a peaceful solution to this ongoing crisis. Those people who have gathered in Istanbul are the same who have gathered previously in Tunisia. They're a group of warlords and they are warmongers, and they are actually trading with the innocent, the blood of innocent Syrians who have been killed, almost 7,000 or 8,000 of them. Almost half of them are army soldiers and security forces who have been butchered by those armed gangs. Friends of Syria would support a peaceful settlement. Enemies of Syria would go on arming and training and financing those Islamic fanatics who have been trying to dismantle the very existence and undermine the very existence of the secular state in the Syrian Arab Republic.
Dr. Nidal Kabalan, I wish we had more time for this. We don't here on RT. Former Syrian ambassador to Turkey, thank you for joining us live from Damascus.
Thank you.
That are in the Geneva document. Geneva is in the Geneva plan, based on the Geneva framework, the Geneva document, and the Geneva agreements.